The summer of 1940 marked Britain's darkest hour. The skies above London echoed with the wail of air raid sirens as families huddled together in bomb shelters, uncertain of what the next day would bring. The threat of destruction loomed over every city and village, casting a shadow of fear and determination across the nation. France, Britain's closest ally, had fallen in a matter of weeks, its capital occupied by German forces. The world watched in shock as the seemingly unstoppable Nazi war machine swept across Western Europe, leaving devastation in its wake. The British army, battered and exhausted, barely escaped annihilation at Dunkirk. Over 300,000 soldiers were rescued in a desperate evacuation, a miracle of courage and improvisation that saved the core of Britain's fighting force, but left behind most of their equipment and heavy weapons. Now, Nazi Germany controlled the European coastline from the icy fjords of Norway in the north to the sun-baked shores of Spain in the south. The ports and harbours of the continent bristled with German troops and artillery, all poised to strike across the narrow waters of the English Channel. Britain stood utterly alone, facing Hitler's seemingly unstoppable war machine. The threat of invasion was no longer a distant possibility, it was an imminent danger. Hitler expected Britain to surrender, to accept defeat as so many others had. But Winston Churchill, the new Prime Minister, refused to yield. His resolve was unbreakable, his words a rallying cry for resistance. Churchill's speeches echoed through every home and street, vowing never to surrender, never to give in, no matter the cost. His defiance inspired a battered nation to stand firm, united in the face of overwhelming odds. Hitler's hopes for a quick peace evaporated as British resolve hardened. The German High Command realized that conquering Britain would not be as easy as they had hoped. With Britain refusing to bow, Hitler ordered preparations for invasion, Operation Sea Lion. Plans were drawn, maps studied, and the German military began to assemble the forces needed for a cross-channel assault. Germany's army was powerful, its air force, the Luftwaffe, modern and deadly. But its navy, the Kriegsmarine, was weak and outnumbered, lacking the ships needed to challenge British control of the seas. Invading Britain meant crossing the Channel, a narrow strip of water fiercely defended by the world's strongest navy. The Royal Navy patrolled day and night, ready to repel any attempt at invasion. The stakes could not have been higher. Total victory for Germany or survival for Britain and the free world. Every decision, every plan carried the weight of history. Across the country, every British town and beach prepared for battle. The Home Guard trained with makeshift weapons, while civilians built barricades and laid obstacles along the coast, determined to resist any invader. The entire nation mobilized for war. Women worked tirelessly in munitions factories, men fortified streets and homes, and families endured rationing and hardship. Daily life was transformed into a collective war effort, with everyone playing a part in the struggle for survival. For Hitler, the plan to invade Britain was born of necessity, not desire. He knew the risks, but believed that Britain's defeat was essential for his vision of a new Europe. The Wehrmacht was ready, its soldiers and vehicles prepared for battle. But the Kriegsmarine, outnumbered and outgunned, faced a daunting challenge against the Royal Navy. The fate of the free world now hung over the grey, stormy waters of the Channel. Every wave, every cloud seemed to hold the promise of invasion or salvation. Britain's resistance, its pilots, sailors, soldiers and civilians would decide the course of history. The coming battle would test the courage and resolve of an entire nation. The summer of 1940 became a test of national will and resolve. In the face of terror and uncertainty, the British people stood together, determined that their island would never fall. Operation Sea Lion was a bold, unprecedented gamble by Hitler and his high command. In the summer of 1940, with France defeated and much of Europe under Nazi control, the Germans turned their gaze across the English Channel. The plan was audacious: to invade Great Britain itself, something no foreign army had attempted in centuries. The Germans intended to land 90,000 troops on England's southern coast in the first wave, with tens of thousands more to follow. Their goal was to quickly seize key ports and push inland, aiming to encircle London and force a British surrender. Soldiers trained for amphibious landings, rehearsing for a battle that would decide the fate of the war in the West. But the plan was deeply flawed from the outset. Germany's navy, the Kriegsmarine, was in no shape for such a massive operation. After heavy losses in Norway, their fleet was battered, outnumbered and outgunned by the British Royal Navy. Many of their best ships were damaged or sunk, leaving only a handful of warships to protect the invasion force. The invasion fleet itself was a patchwork of over 2,000 vessels, most of them hastily converted river barges. These makeshift transports were slow, vulnerable and ill-suited for the rough waters of the Channel. Many lacked proper engines or navigation equipment, making them easy targets for British defences. Success depended entirely on destroying the Royal Air Force. Goering, head of the Luftwaffe, promised that his bombers and fighters would sweep the skies clear of British resistance. Only with total air superiority could the invasion even be attempted. But the RAF, though outnumbered, was determined and well prepared, scrambling Spitfires and Hurricanes to meet the German onslaught in fierce dogfights over the Channel. Within the German High Command, opinions were sharply divided. The army was confident, eager for a quick victory, but the Navy was deeply pessimistic, warning that the operation was doomed without control of the sea. Even if the Luftwaffe succeeded, naval commanders cautioned that the Royal Navy's powerful fleet could devastate the slow-moving invasion barges before they reached the English coast. The Royal Navy, with its destroyers and cruisers, patrolled the Channel relentlessly, ready to intercept any German landing force. British preparations for defence were thorough, with coastal defences strengthened and troops on high alert. The plan was rushed, built more on hope and desperation than on solid military strategy. Internal disagreements and logistical nightmares plagued the operation from the very beginning, with commanders arguing over every detail. As German soldiers waited anxiously on their barges, staring across the stormy Channel, the odds against them mounted. Before a single soldier set foot on British soil, Operation Sea Lion was already a desperate gamble, and one that would never be played out, and would go down in history as a masterstroke of British resistance and German overreach. In the summer of 1940, Britain braced for invasion, transforming itself almost overnight into a fortress. The threat of German attack loomed large, and the entire nation mobilized to defend its shores. Streets, once bustling with daily life, were now lined with sandbags and barricades, while anti-aircraft guns dotted the skyline, ready to repel enemy bombers. The Home Guard, a citizen army of volunteers, sprang up in towns and villages across the country, often poorly armed, sometimes with little more than hunting rifles or makeshift weapons, but fiercely determined to defend their homes and families. Men too old or too young for regular service drilled side by side, united by a common purpose. Along the coastline, defences multiplied. Barbed wire snaked across beaches, pillboxes and concrete bunkers rose from the sand, and anti-tank obstacles, known as Dragon's Teeth, were installed to halt enemy vehicles. Soldiers worked day and night, laying mines and preparing for the worst. General Ironside, tasked with organising Britain's defence, devised a strategy of layered resistance, a thin but vigilant line on the beaches, backed by mobile reserves ready to counterattack any breakthrough. Every possible approach was considered, every weakness reinforced. At sea, the Royal Navy, the world's largest and most powerful fleet, patrolled the English Channel relentlessly. Warships and destroyers kept constant watch, determined to intercept any German invasion force before it could reach British soil. British commanders, drawing on centuries of naval tradition and military experience, were confident. They believed that if the Germans dared to cross the Channel, their forces would be met with overwhelming firepower and destroyed before they could land. In the skies above, the Royal Air Force stood as Britain's shield. Led by the resolute Air Chief Marshal Dowding, the RAF prepared for the coming storm, knowing that air superiority would be crucial to the nation's survival. Squadrons of Hurricanes and Spitfires, sleek and deadly, waited on airfields across southern England. Guided by the revolutionary Dowding system, a network of radar, observers and rapid communication, they stood ready to scramble at a moment's notice. Radar stations along the coast, manned by vigilant operators, provided early warning of incoming raids. Ground observers, armed with binoculars and radios, scanned the skies day and night, ensuring no enemy aircraft could approach undetected. Every town, every field, every winding country road became part of the defensive web. Barricades blocked key routes, and the Home Guard patrolled the countryside, ever watchful for signs of enemy activity. Britain's survival depended on seamless coordination between land, sea and air forces. Soldiers, sailors and airmen worked together, sharing intelligence and responding rapidly to any threat. The nation's resolve was unbreakable. Civilians and soldiers alike laboured side by side, turning the island into an impregnable stronghold. From city streets to rural villages, the spirit of defiance united everyone. The stage was set for a battle that would decide not just the fate of Britain, but the future of Europe itself. The world watched as the island fortress prepared to stand firm against the coming storm. The Battle of Britain began in August 1940. The Luftwaffe launched massive raids targeting RAF airfields and radar stations. RAF pilots flew multiple sorties daily, fighting against overwhelming odds. For weeks, the outcome hung in the balance as airfields were bombed and pilots lost. A turning point came when the Luftwaffe shifted from airfields to bombing London. This gave the RAF a vital breathing space to recover and regroup. On September 15th, the Luftwaffe launched a huge raid, expecting victory. Instead, they were met by a fierce, coordinated RAF defense. German bombers suffered heavy losses. The RAF proved unbroken. The Luftwaffe failed to gain air superiority. Without control of the skies, Operation Sea Lion was doomed. The RAF's resilience saved Britain from invasion. The battle became a symbol of courage and determination. Hitler's plans for Britain collapsed in the face of British defiance. While the RAF fought above, the Royal Navy waited below. The Kriegsmarine was hopelessly outmatched, crippled from Norway with few ships left. The German invasion fleet, mostly slow river barges, was vulnerable to attack. The Royal Navy's destroyers and cruisers could have annihilated the invasion force, especially at night. Bad weather alone could have doomed the German crossing. Admiral Forbes planned to unleash the home fleet at the first sign of invasion. British sailors were ready and confident. The Royal Navy's presence made the invasion nearly suicidal for Germany. Britain's wooden walls remained its ultimate defense. Operation Sea Lion failed because its requirements were impossible. The Luftwaffe couldn't defeat the RAF, leaving the invasion fleet exposed. The Royal Navy's overwhelming power made a channel crossing suicidal. Germany lacked enough landing craft and relied on unfit river barges. Supplying an army across the channel under constant attack was a logistical nightmare. Hitler realized the risks outweighed the rewards. As autumn weather worsened, the invasion window closed. On October 12, 1940, Hitler postponed Sea Lion indefinitely. By December, his focus had shifted to the Soviet Union. The invasion of Britain was quietly abandoned. Britain's survival changed the course of the war. The Channel remained an unbroken barrier to Nazi conquest. What if Hitler had launched the invasion anyway? War games and simulations like the 1974 Sandhurst exercise offer answers. The results were disastrous for Germany. The Royal Navy would have destroyed the invasion fleet, isolating German troops on the beaches. Cut off from supplies, the Germans would have faced relentless British counterattacks. The Home Guard and regular army would have contained and overwhelmed the beachhead. The operation would have ended in defeat and mass surrender. Sea Lion was doomed by naval inferiority and logistical weakness. Churchill's defiance was grounded in military reality. Britain could have repelled the invasion. Imagine if Sea Lion had succeeded. The RAF and Royal Navy would have had to be destroyed, an unlikely scenario. If Germany had conquered Britain, the consequences would have been catastrophic. Hitler would have dominated Europe with no Western Front or D-Day. The US might have stayed out of the war longer. The full force of Germany could have turned east against the Soviet Union. Nazi rule would have reshaped Europe, with democracy extinguished and the Holocaust unchecked. The British Empire would have collapsed. The failure of Sea Lion preserved hope for freedom and changed world history. The Channel's waters once again protected not just Britain, but the future of the free world.